Hey everyone, I'm Brandon Vinyard. I've been selling bank-owned properties for over 18 years, and today we're going to discuss 3 of the most common mistakes I see when it comes to submitting offers on bank foreclosures. These 3 things are going to help you get more offers accepted, and I'm going to explain why and show you some really good examples. Stay tuned. Okay, 3 of the biggest, most common mistakes I see when writing offers on foreclosures. Well, number 1, dirty contracts. And what do I mean by that? Bad contingencies and way too many of them. In our local contract in Florida, it's Section 20. If you're an agent and you're having to write terms and things in Section 20, then you're increasing your chances of the offer being rejected or countered. Worst case scenario, it's rejected. Best case scenario, you're going to get countered. There's no reason to put verbiage in the contract on a foreclosure unless it's very specific to the deal. This right here, taxes, liens, real estate fees, that's done. That's already given. You don't need to put that in there. You got to remember, the most important thing always is to try and keep these contracts clean. Keep them simple. Here's another example. This does not need to be in here. There's no reason to put this in the contract. I get it from some agents. It makes you feel like, all right, well, my buyer's been warned. They know it's in writing, but this contract's going to a corporate seller. You don't need that verbiage in there. There's no reason to have it. Okay, real quick. The second part, contingent on property appraising. This is very specific to this particular deal. This was a rehab type loan. That's not going to be a huge problem. And I mean, that's not an issue, something that specific, but in the general terms, the other stuff, don't do it. Okay, here's a perfect example. In my career selling foreclosures, I've never, ever once had a corporate seller have a survey. Never. This is a guaranteed counter item right here. Anytime you put seller provide, it's guaranteed going to be countered because they don't have it. Just remember that, especially the survey. This is one of the biggest ones I see, but here's a perfect example. Okay, this is probably a new one on me. I've never seen this before until recently, but be honest with you, I don't care if it's a foreclosure, if it's a retail typical deal, with a normal seller. This is a horrible contingency. No way would I ever take this. This is the most loose thing I've ever seen, but this is a guaranteed counter or rejection. Once again, do not put just dumb things in this contracts. You're going to force them to counter. Okay, this is something else I get a lot too, is like agents putting in information that aren't specific. Okay, and I get it, closing to occur 10 days following, I get it, but we always have to turn in specific dates. I can put in the notes about closing on whatever, so many days out, but we're always forced to put a date. Do not put a corporate contract in without having specific details. That's why a lot of us listing agents, you'll see a closing summary sheet or an offer summary sheet. Basically, give us the nuts and bolts of your offer. That way, we guarantee that we match up with your contract. But these kind of contracts right here, they're just forcing you to be countered. I mean, there's no way that the sellers can ever take this. And you cannot split closing costs. Don't ever ask that either. That's just not a good idea in a foreclosure. You either pick. You're either paying for it, the buyer's paying for it, or you have the seller paying for it. But pick. Be specific. Okay, EMD. Here's the second big thing that I see that a lot of agents and a lot of buyers really, really screw up on. So here's an example, and I'm showing you a cash deal, so this is not financing. If this was financing, I wouldn't have a problem with $1,000 EMD, but I'm only speaking of cash deals because this is kind of what separates, a lot of investors from people that do this for a living is the EMD amounts. Now, a couple quick notes. You should always, always be aiming for 10% EMD. If you're buying a Fannie Mae or a government property, especially Fannie Mae, if you're paying cash, it doesn't matter if you're an investor or an owner occupant, you're going to put 10% EMD down. you're putting 10%. So if you have that same mentality on all the other foreclosures, you'll get more offers accepted. One thing I see a lot, and I see a lot of $500. Don't ever do that in a foreclosure. I don't care if it's even, unless it's a HUD and it specifically says the EMD, don't ever, ever, ever put 500. It's going to be countered. All right. See, this is an example of an actual investor that actually gets it. This is an investor that I know that gets a lot of his offers accepted too. And here's an example. He's always putting at least 10% down EMD, always. And these offers go to the top, I promise you. Okay. The third biggest thing, inspection days. The amount of time you ask for your inspections. And this is another big one. So our main contract that we use, it defaults if you leave it blank to 15 days. This is not good. It's a bad idea. You should never, ever, ever ask for more than 10 days on a foreclosure. And most of them don't have the authority to go past that. There are a few, but if you're in a competitive offer situation or it's a good property, 15 days it's going to force them to counter you. And that's not what you want. So this is a big thing too. I get asked a lot. There are some REO sellers that don't really care if you have the house inspected before you offer. And there's some that kind of do for liability reasons, I guess. But some of them kind of have a just throw a fit about it. But one of the best things you can do besides your bigger EMDs is having a limited to lower amount of days for inspection. Like I said, 15 days is going to guarantee you a counter. Some sellers default to 10. Well, that's why I said I would never go past 10. Now, if it's a good property and really aggressive, I would never go past 7. But when you start getting to 5 and 3 and 0, then you're going to really, really get more offers accepted. One of my biggest clients, one of their biggest things is inspection days. They'll discount. I mean, they'll slash pricing. It blows me away sometimes to see how much they will, but they will slash pricing for limited inspection days. So it's a huge factor. And it's another thing that so many people screw up on. Do not leave it default to 15 days. Okay, real quick, I'm going to give you one more tidbit, and this is response times. This is something else that kind of drives me nuts because agents just take this over from regular retail deals. And I mean, almost 100%, honestly. Seldom do I see an offer that doesn't have a minimum of 48 to 72 hour response time. There's not a corporate seller in the world that's going to respond that fast, especially in writing, especially getting your contracts back in writing. So this to me is just it's ridiculous. If anything does happen, or actually when it does happen and you were using this original contract, that's something that you got to get changed anyway. So my advice is always give it at least 7 days. I mean, you got to remember, it's not like a typical house that's, for sale. These sellers are going to have addendums. They're not going to be able to sign it and it be enforced anyway. So you have nothing to worry about as the agent of the buyer because you simply don't ever have to return paperwork. If you put 7 days and in 14 days, the agent called you and said, hey, guess what? Your offer's been accepted. You have the ability to accept it or not. You're out of contract. But don't put 2 days, 2 or 3 days. It just creates more aggravation and there's no reason for it. And if you explain it in that manner, that remember, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, even if you don't put a date at all. I mean, I normally do it like 2 weeks. I just tell people the same thing. Look, just leave it out there. If anything happens and they accept it and you don't want it, all I'm going to do is call you and say, hey, they accept it. You're going to say, oh, I don't want it. Then that's it. There's nothing legally binding you. They're not going to sign anything and make you, that contract binding. So just remember, put those dates out. It makes it a heck of a lot easier. All right. Just remember, keep your contracts clean, larger EMDs, shorter inspection days, and don't put a ridiculous time frame on your acceptance time frame. Now, do remember, I've never seen a client in my entire history of selling foreclosures ever look at the acceptance time frame given by an agent and react. Never. That's it.